So it's that time, isn't it, for a little video update here? And I thought I'd bring up a relevant point that many people tend to forget. You see, here on the 12th of June of 2025, I actually turned 40 years old, which should be a milestone in anybody's life. However, not so in mine, because for the last 17 years, I have been living under the most extreme, draconian, and isolated circumstances ever imaginable, and for one reason and one reason alone, and that is because I have been selected to be the face or the so-called protagonist of the US run global social engineering experiment in cooperation with Denmark. So for the last 17 years, my life, entire adult life almost, has been completely destroyed and robbed from me, and there is still no end in sight. Since 2008, the Danish government has actively turned the entire Danish population against me on a continuous basis. That is 17 years of being persecuted in public, which has entailed constant ridicule and discrediting, seemingly never-ending dissemination of propaganda narratives and psyops, as well as fabricated claims and accusations, everything from being a prolific sex criminal to terrorism and everything in between, constant directed energy weapons attacks, more sleep deprivation than you ever want to imagine, continuous psychological operations, broadcast to the public at large, through various communication systems, one of which is a synthetic telepathy communication system that is being used to broadcast messages to everybody within a certain vicinity to me, through which people are being provoked and encouraged to hate and despise me, as well as to act maliciously against me in all sorts of ways, controlled and dictated in real time through this exotic communication system by the intelligence agencies. All of these active measures and psychological operations are being continuously waged with the same intent in mind, and that is to create in society the perception of a common enemy that everybody needs to help the government defeat, or should I say help the US intelligence and public-private partnerships defeat, because it is ultimately these powers that are running the show. The Danish government and its intelligence agency PET have actively used Denmark's monopoly broadcasting services here in Denmark, called Danish Radio and TV2, to perpetuate the social engineering program's lies, fabrications and propaganda, effectively indoctrinating the entire population to believe that despite how I'm never being charged or prosecuted, I am nevertheless a prolific sex criminal like the world has never seen, and on top of that I am also a traitor to my country, as well as a terrorist from time to time. That is literally the level at which they are indoctrinating the Danish population to believe in the program's psychological operations. In fact, the indoctrination of the Danish public is so all-encompassing that schools and educational services almost have it as a curriculum to indoctrinate kids and students for the last 17 years to believe in the social engineering experiment. In light of all of these active measures and clandestine operations run by foreign intelligence services and public-private partnerships on Danish soil, it is no surprise how the satellite state of Denmark has had such great success in creating this apartheid-like situation where everybody and anybody is prohibited from having any organic conversations and interactions with me, as well as forming relationships of any kind. Why they have such great success in prohibiting people from doing any business with me or One Stop Engine Shop, as well as preventing people from buying my car for 2.4 years. These are economic sanctions that I'm merely touching upon here, but are nevertheless affecting thousands of people each year from all over the world who want to do business with me, and especially One Stop Engine Shop. I know it might sound like I'm always talking about issues that are only affecting me personally. However, that is a misconception, because the global social engineering experiment obviously hasn't been run for the last 17 years for people's entertainment in any way, shape or form. Instead, the social engineering program is purposely being used to implement technocratic authoritarianism, which is slowly but surely superseding so-called democracy and the rule of law. In fact, the powers that be are using me as a pretext or conduit in many respects to install major social change, via indoctrination and normalization of all of these technocratic authoritarian things that are taking place in the public persecution of me, as well as the global social engineering experiment in general. This is something the CEO of Palantir, Alex Karp, almost directly addresses in his speech on the 22nd of May of 2025.
A lot of money on something, then it must be right. So we've changed the world by humiliating people and getting rich. It's the most effective way for social change is humiliate your enemy and make them poor. And that's how social change actually happens.
I am truly up against the most powerful state and military-industrial complex and corporations of this world. So obviously there is very little I can do, and at any time they can have me set up or killed at their wish, and which they most likely will do once I have served the purpose that they have laid out for me. But until then, I can be a nuisance for them and their agenda, which I certainly will be as long as this authoritarian situation is ongoing.